Alright, we've got two packages. First we got the one from Crunchy Munchy. Huh. I wonder what that's from. It looks like lint and not like something that came off last week's anime DVDs. But I don't think I used it for anything like that, so color me confused. Oh well. We'll begin. Yeah, I did not injure it at all. Nothing else in there. And then we also had this shipped from Amazon. I don't remember what everything is. I think my timing for some of this stuff is also a little bit late. But let's, oh yeah, Ultraman The Adventure Begins. Which I was unsure, because this is Ultraman USA, but, you know, now that that's Japanese, includes both US version and Japanese version. So, yes, it is. I almost got the impression that maybe this was something with like American directors or attached to it, but that kind of makes it anime. If that's the case, it makes it kind of anime like Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland. Although that one will still be one of my favorite Edge case ones to talk about. Anyways, a fairly straightforward release. And who released this one again? Because this is... That's not Discotheque Eastern Star. Who the hell is that? I might be able to tell if the camera would focus, but it's not. Oh, there we go. Regions A, B, C. I was curious about that. Audio. You know what? I don't want to wrestle with it. Well, first we're going to go with the Irregular at Magic High Season 3? Season 3, complete Blu-ray box set. Which I don't think I already had, but, you know, it's sometimes hard to remember what I do and don't have. I just have so much stuff. Well, that, and I'm also getting so old, but... Okay, those art images near the end are actually quite neat. Hopefully, them flashing by was actually appreciated. Well, I mean, slowly looking at them, and maybe not having these graphics upside... Wait, no, they are upside down. It's interesting how they all ended up mostly upside down, but there's Irregular at Magic High Season 3. And then last but not least, we have Sing Yesterday for Me, which is another Anime Limited. Is that what they were called? Let's get this plastic off first. Okay, so let's see. Regions A and B. Guess I don't see where it says, but this is a 12-episode series. So this isn't a movie, this is a series. Japanese and English audio, subtitles English. Okay, and I don't know much about it. But there it is. No, good stuff. Well, it's awfully quick, but here's this week's Physical Anime Collection update. Okay, so we had a ton of new stuff start this week. And so I guess that's part of the reason why there's nothing other than all the new stuff I watched. Another part of that was, you know, 4th of July meant spending that with family. A couple other things that came up. Not spending it with Friday Friend. You know, just a whole lot of stuff. So it's really just all the new stuff. And I did talk about it a little bit with a coworker, but man, I didn't list everything that I started. So let's see what I can remember going through it here. First off, at the top of the list is New Saga Episode 1, which is a go back in time, try it again. There are interesting aspects to this first episode. There are elements of it that I thought were kind of a weak first episode,
maybe a little too expositional without giving us a good feel. So like, I don't have the clearest idea, and I think the guy actually said how far back he went, but I don't have the clearest idea of how far back he went, because it begins with a lot of exposition, names and years, and I'm like, What would have felt better for me is if I would have ended at least the first episode having a feel for what do I expect of this character, this specific character that they've gone back in time to redo things. Like, would... Yeah, because I'm having to judge what happened in the episode, and it's mostly okay, but, you know, maybe not great, exciting, enticing per se. Where, like, I think, like, the way he apologized to the childhood friend, that one's like, is this something that somebody who is 5 years more mature than they actually were would do? I don't know. Because I don't really know what kind of person he matured into post-war. So it feels a little disconnected. But overall, I thought the setup for it was very interesting, because I think other times, okay, I'm trying to remember some of the other times. I remember that one, there was just a lot of magical energy. This one there was, but it was related to the events that kicked off everything, which kind of makes it where our main characters being sent back seems to be directly connected to the events that caused them to be sent back in some way. As in, like, maybe not he caused himself to be sent back, but instead it seems more like... And maybe that's a possibility. But it seems more like, assuming he and the Demon Lord are different people, or different entities, does it mean they kind of have conflicting reasons for maybe the sent back? Because it seems like the Demon Lord was trying to do that. But, I don't know. It's intriguing stuff. Some weaknesses in the first episode, but I guess we'll just have to see where it goes from here. We have Reborn as a Vending Machine, Season 2, Episode 1. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on it, because it just kind of resumes where it left off. And I guess this episode didn't feel like it had some of the little things that it felt like. Like, I felt like in the first season it was just fun seeing new characters meet Boxy. And this time it felt like while there was set up to potentially do some of that, it didn't, because it was just resuming where it left off in the middle of, I guess, an important story event. So it's more like if you have an episode on pause and you press play a day later or something like that. So it sort of feels like that. So it's really hard to gauge Season 2, because it doesn't really feel like the beginning of a season or something like that. It just sort of feels like it resumed. And I guess I'm going to mention Dan Dan Season 2 Episode 13. So it's not the 13th episode of the second season, but the 13th episode of the series. But it's being called Season 2. So I kind of felt that was similar, where it wasn't necessarily bad. It was just sort of like you pressed play on something you pressed pause on before. So its contents may have been good, but it just feels really weird because we're back, and it's just hard to gauge what it means to be back. I guess we just have to see what's going to happen, maybe. But, you know, it's interesting. There are a lot of pairs of stuff in this season. Because, like I mentioned, New Saga's strange beginning, but Clivates? I know they pronounced it in the show, but I'm just really bad with names. So Clivates, Episode 1, was interesting because I thought, in contrast to New Saga, it had a really great first episode. Now, whether or not it continues to be good is definitely to be seen, but it's got a pretty spectacular quote in it. For me, it feels like a strange anime version of I was on the way to my kitchen, I got lost. You got lost. You ended up in the 12th plane of torment while wandering to your kitchen, I am not a clever man. Right? If you've seen that comic, you've seen that comic. I told it horribly, so I apologize for that. And while this isn't the same as that, it does sort of feel like the same spirit. A sort of mix of this grandiose, otherworldly force with the mundane. And while the positions of the mundane, the otherworldly force, the actions, the interactions are different, it's just interesting, especially since this show kind of has, or this episode has an order of events to it that are just like, yeah, that's a surprisingly natural place for it to go. And so the interesting thing is a lot of the first episode is setting stuff up. And again, I thought it was better. It had its expositional moment, but it kind of introduced us to stuff. It introduced stuff to us first. We actually see the world through the lady girl as a little girl. And we learn some of the world, some of her motivations, some of that stuff, you know. We learn that about her as a character at the beginning, so we kind of have more to build on through the first episode. And then they have their expositional section, maybe 1.5 of them, but I felt like they built enough for us to build on top of that other stuff where it didn't feel so bad. But then, you know, after the exposition, or in between the exposition, it has this series of events that just makes sense. They're just quite fascinating. The titular character, Clavatis, is actually quite intriguing and very well played. I think I watched it dubbed, and seems like a good dub. Now, granted, it's easier to think that when the very first time you watch a good show is dubbed, so there could be a bit of a cheating there. But, you know, overall, I thought it was a really fun and interesting setup, and they had a little thing at the end which kind of lets us know that I guess it has ideas in mind that'll say, okay, but we're playing interestingly with the tropes. So it has an element of mystery, unknown. We kind of know the goal a bit, but I'm not really sure where it's going to go, and I'm really interested in the characters who are participating in that journey. So, good first episode, I would say. Next up, we have Onmyo Kaiten Rebirth Verse. Episode 1. I don't know what to make of the name. Some of these names are really weird this season. I'm going to be really bad with a lot of them, so I apologize for that. And this is actually the last thing on the list I've watched, but, you know, it airs every Wednesday, so it's earlier in the list. My notes help me keep track of, okay, what can I expect to come out on Wednesday when I'm going to watch stuff. And I guess it's off to an okay start. It's strange. Some of the elements of it are our main character. It's hard to know if it's the most effective it could have been for a New World thing, but it also might have worked fine. I think some elements of, sometimes it feels like he's acting too dumb, and it's like, I'm going to pause it a bit and do something else and then come back to it. And maybe some of that is also just that I have this looming sense of I need to wrap things up tonight, and that was the last anime on my list of stuff that I was definitely going to watch before this video that I wanted to finish. And yeah, it's really hard to say. It seems good, like it sets up a lot of stuff, and there's some intriguing things that I think are actually covered in the description of the show. But the truth of the matter is I was having trouble following the description. Just thinking at least get a general idea so I can watch the first episode and just find out. And finally watch the first episode, and off to an okay start. At least. Let's see. Next up we have Welcome to the Outcast Restaurant, Episode 1. And this is interesting because there are two kicked out of the Heroes Party or S-Rank Party or whatever. And I think the other one is scooped up by an S-Rank Adventurer. That's a Saturday one. And I think there's something interesting to mention about the both of them together before I start talking about the individual ones. And I guess I'll jump to the other one simply because I started talking about it here. I feel like there's a good iteration or refinement of the formula that has happened with both of these series where I think Scooped Up did it better, but Outcast's Restaurant also did a little bit of it, and that's one of the things that makes it, you know, there's like maybe two elements that make it difficult to believe the cast out by the S-Rank party, I guess, story, and one of those is, as a coworker put it, the well-oiled machine concept, and this is the one that's usually a much bigger problem, because, like, okay, when you have a group of 3 or 4 people who have been going into dungeons over and over again, you would think that people who have gone through conflict a whole lot would kind of understand what other people are doing and how things actually balance out. And so they have to make people really, really, really dumb, really, really, really one-track villain, sort of, just ignoring the most basic thing of, okay, well, first of all, how'd you become a hero even though you're dumber than dirt? I mean, even dirt is smarter than you, or something like that. The other one is usually the character kicked out has something that's just like, how did you know that their skills were not OP? And Outcast Restaurant so far hasn't been making it where the main character's skills are OP per se. Well, okay, first I wanted to say, the reason both of these work is because I think they kind of address those a little bit better. So, Outcast Restaurant, I don't think they said it was the Heroes Party. I think it was just an S-Rank guild. And they gave the impression that it was bigger than a whole lot of them. And that kind of gives, you know, a little bit of leeway for thinking, okay, yeah, it makes sense that maybe somebody doesn't have the complete picture. But also, now that I think about it, there were little things that I thought the Guildmaster said that kind of implied maybe something else is going on, and I'm not exactly sure what that is. But for the most part, you know, he kicked him out, not necessarily because it's like, oh, I underestimated you. It's like, it sounds like he's valuable to them. Maybe there's some ulterior motive beyond the just political shuffling that happened to the main character. I didn't quite expect him, again, I don't read the description, so it was probably in the description. I didn't expect him to go out of his way to buy the slave, but, you know, for the most part, it left the first episode with a handful of interesting things, little things people have said, and now we have 2 things that we want to see in this show. One of the reasons I was looking forward to this is because it looks like it's about him cooking, and I want to see him cooking. And now there's this other thing. It's like, okay, he bought this slave girl not because he needed the hand and we want to see her help him, but because he saw something in her that was a form of despair he felt, so he managed to save her from that and give her something. So we kind of want to see her heal. And I think the first episode ended at a point where we're like, okay, I think it's going to give us at least both of those. And again, there's this other interesting things set up. So off to a good start, I would say. Like, it didn't show us, okay, his restaurant is open and he's booming and everybody's coming in. But the implications for the season preview kind of suggest that this isn't going to be the sort of show where we watch him struggle, and I don't want to see him struggle. I want to see him cook some damn food. I want, that's what I want. I could be a little different in that regard. And I would say weird, but not really weird, just different in that regard. You know, the other things that make me weird are other things, but we have that. If there was any complaint I have on the first episode, it's that I didn't like the female friend. And the reason for that is kind of interesting because, you know, she's kind of put in place to let us know that his skills are recognized and valued. But the problem is she was telling it to him when he wasn't the one that quit. He was the one that got kicked out. It's like, are you that fucking bird lady from Shield Hero? It's like, in that one, she was blaming the Shield Hero, or telling the Shield Hero he needed to do stuff. It's like, fucking, he's the victim. If you want to say that, go tell it to those other 3 fucking assholes. And while she wasn't as bad as Bird Lady, it still rubbed me the wrong way in that regard. We'll have to see if it maybe comes back and turns itself around, because it's a sour start, but honestly, it's not as bad of a sour start as like the those three ladies from Brilliant Healer from the Shadows, which was another kicked out of the Heroes Party one. That one I thought kind of made a little sense, but it was still kind of out there, I guess. It helps that, when they're S-rank adventures and they're built up to, we consider them heroes, or we consider them S-rank or whatever, if the main character was kind of helping things in the background. And maybe because they were all new when they started, they didn't quite realize how much was happening because of him versus... It's sort of like if somebody thought they had psychic powers because every time they thought something with their mind, they could move it, but it turned out it was just somebody with telepathic and telekinetic powers doing it for them. That would be something that plays with your mind, and I wonder if there could be something similar there. But at the same time, sometimes it does require the people to be one-dimensional, which makes it really weird. So, the reason I thought Scooped Up Bride and S-Rank Adventure also played really well with the formula was mostly because they made it so our main character, he was very isolated. And he did join a party, and that party helped. But what he was doing was always a redundant role, so it was never obvious, especially given his odd communication skills, which actually make a lot more sense in this show than a whole lot of other shows, just because of the way he was raised, which is to say, out on his own, and he doesn't necessarily have that much confidence. The only person he's interacted with has been better than, etc., etc., etc. And so, like, the leader of the party will tell the other white mage to do healing, and he'll do the healing at the same time she does, and it's just not obvious that he's necessarily the one to do it. He'll also help reinforce people's strength and defense and stuff, and the leader is definitely an arrogant shithead, one-dimensional, but it does feel like it got built up to that, like a whole lot of other shows. But the thing that makes it really believable is other characters like, why are the hits landing on my shield so light? There's something weird going on. And it makes sense that she hasn't caught on, the tank girl hasn't caught on that it's our main character who was doing that, because he was just kind of silently doing stuff. It looked like he wasn't doing anything, even though he was doing stuff for other people. And, he kind of believes, in a way that's more convincing, that he's just not powerful enough. Because he doesn't really have any experience. This is his first experience with other people, and it's just sort of like, I thought, a very reasonable setup. Especially since, in order to successfully kick somebody from an S-Rank party or the Heroes Party or something, usually you need a lot of one-dimensional characters. You need people who are like, oh yes, they're all idiots. Well, okay, only 3 of them were idiots, and that one was actually... secretly knowing all along, but was betraying them, which is weird. So, overall, I thought it was a good first episode, with the main problem being that we didn't get to see our main character, what he does after this, but I thought all the setup to that was actually good enough that it warrants watching episode 2. Now, episodes 2 and 3 could make it where it just feels like this show doesn't feel like there will be much to it, but we'll have to see what it's doing with this stuff. Because it was, I thought, a good setup. Again, both of those, I think, are a good, positive iteration towards better kick from the S-Rank party shows. Let's see. Next up on the list is The Water Magician, Episode 1, which I enjoyed. I'm trying to remember all the setup for it, but there's some elements of it that's sort of reminiscent of Farming Life in Another World, at least this far, insofar as it at least feels like a kind of personal experience, although this one has a more of an action-y slant than a village building slant. And I say action-y, maybe adventurous would be a better word for it, where it does feel like the main character does some interesting stuff in there, where it's like, I'm not sure if he's necessarily being built up to be OP, so much as he's just having an interesting experience. So really it depends what starts happening once they introduce other characters, because Farming Life in Another World is kind of like that, where they didn't really introduce other characters until episodes 2 and 3. So we'll have to see if this one's going to be the same, but As far as just the first episode, I thought it was a fun, adventurous little first episode. I'm definitely curious to see where they go from there. Next up is Secrets of the Silent Witch, episode 1. And I think my worry about that one... Okay, so... talk about shows that need to get around believability stuff. The Silent Witch one introduces as a premise something where you're like, just because she was highly motivated to not speak because she was shy, it doesn't really explain why nobody else discovered it first. We understand why she would have the motivation to do it, and that's always a weakness of setups like this. Why did this one character discover something special that none of the other characters have? And some of them get around with it, like, great, I don't have the name there. The one with the guy who resurrected into the Guardian Bearers. That one explained it from the point of view of he had latent occasional memories from his past life that allowed him to start perceiving things in a way that other characters had not. And that was actually very clever because it really gives you a reason to understand why the main character is doing things that other characters are not, even though that was only like 2 or 3 things. Maybe 3 or 4 things, I don't know. It was sparse in that one, and that was one of the things. So this one, the show doesn't really give you that. And so that's something that gives it a hurdle to overcome. Would you want to watch it despite that? And I feel like the execution is there. Like she seems more interesting and not just, we came in with an interesting idea with no love for whether or not we will like the character. No, I think she's convincing, maybe not necessarily as somebody that would be the only person to come up with, but, you know, she does come off as endearing. She does come off as smart, calculating, as in, like, I think it's implied that maybe she has some calculational abilities she's developed that help her to do that, because everybody else has to maybe do that. And she passes off herself as a mathematician to the village girl. And I don't think that's supposed to imply she actually is a mathematician. You know, that was just her excuse so she could say something that begins with M that sounds like magician and excuses all the books. But in her mind, it's slightly different. But I also think it implies she does a lot of calculation-y stuff, so she might be a very math-minded. Still doesn't explain why other people haven't figured some of this stuff out yet. But, again, her portrayal, the setup, the animation, the characters, all of that is so far leading to an enjoyable experience, which allows you to put that on not necessarily back burner, but rather in that suspension of disbelief. Okay, well, let's just believe that there's some reason there, and maybe the show doesn't know what it is. Maybe it does, and it's something it reveals later. But fortunately, we don't have to think about that too much because it's at least an interesting feeling setup. Even though all it set up was what I saw it described, but it's still a much more convincing first episode than I would have thought just based on the description. So off to a good start there. You know, I'm awfully positive about a whole lot of stuff here, even if there's some negative-ish stuff in there. But let's keep going. This is one that's Apothecary Diary Season 2, Episode 46. Okay. I think an enjoyable episode, with the main problem being that, where's my next fucking episode? It's a good show for that regard, so it's really great for binge watching. And the good thing about it is it's not necessarily something that can only be binge watched, so it's not like something where it's just like, oh, they just spent an episode where they deliberately didn't give us anything. It's like, oh, this is getting juicy. I want to see more. There's just a little bit of juice every episode. It's, yeah, fun stuff. Next on the list is Kaiju number 8 EEX, which is listed under Season 2. And I'd say the biggest problem with this is just that there was this big countdown for it when it's a pretty meh episode. It's definitely one you can completely skip. I think people who like this episode probably want to see their favorite character animated, voice acted, etc. all over again. You know, and so in that regard, it's kind of a good warm up for season 2. But it really is there's nothing of note in it. Just a bunch of characters doing stuff that I don't know that we necessarily really learn anything about the characters except maybe the vice captain. And even then, a lot of it is very worshipping his feet kind of thing as a show. It's just like, okay. But did we really need an episode for that? We didn't need it. Did they need an episode for it? Probably not. So, we have to hold our breath. I think we still have 2 weeks, or maybe a week and a half. It's the 19th, I think, when it comes out. That's 12 days. That's 2 weeks. I think it's the 19th. I could be misremembering. But, you know, I think that's when the real first episode of the second season starts, and that's, I think, what we're all looking forward to. Private Tutor to the Duke's Daughter, Episode 2. What can I say about this? There were some issues I had with the episode that were resolved in the episode. Namely, all of his tutor sessions that we saw pretty much involved, you try, good, now you try, oh, that's okay, it failed, we'll just keep trying. And it's like, is he really doing anything? The way it's executed is weak because it doesn't really feel like he's doing anything. Now, it does tell us later in the episode that he is trying new formulas and different formulas with her. And the end of the episode, I think we're getting a slight hint as to what's really going on, which would lead to him having an interesting breakthrough, which could lead to that. But for the most part, because of that, this show is feeling a little slow. Not necessarily bad, but definitely a little slow, where it's like, I think you can spend some time in episode 2 feeling like, okay, there's character interactions in here. Is it really the time and the place for this? I feel like while these characters are all interesting, I still want something a little bit more to go on, please. But I don't know, just means a slightly weak episode 2, but I'd still say probably about as good as the first episode, as in like it feels like continuing from the first episode. Things are fine. The Shy Hero and the Assassin Princesses, episode 1. So, the jury's still out on this one, what I completely think. My main problem is actually the Shy Hero. Because the Assassin Princesses turned out to be kind of fun. Their dynamics in the first episode were kind of fun. It's worrisome if it's a little one-trick pony-ish, especially since it being about them keeps ending up being about sidelining the Shy Hero, which I think is fine because as interesting as he is, he's less interesting than the Assassin Princesses. But it's also tricky because if it's just the Assassin Princesses, it feels like it's getting close to just cute girls doing cute things. And so his dynamic in there feels important, but at the same time I sort of feel like I want to see less of him. Like, I guess I didn't want to see any of the things where, from his point of view, this is what he thought was going to happen if he wasn't such a super shy person. I think it would have been better if he was just kind of more of a mystery, but maybe that's all I'm thinking right now, and maybe we'll see if it works better as it goes forward. But the problem is the first episode a lot of times has one of the girls just deliberately interact with him so that he gets knocked out standing up, so that they can then have their own little banter using their true feelings, faces, whatever. And I don't know, we'll have to see. I've got some hope that it's not just a one-trick pony. But first episode felt on the fence on whether or not it was that, with the main problem being, again, the Shy Hero part of it. Which is interesting, because, you know, sometimes it's the other way around, because, you know, if it's about him and his harem, then it's like, okay, well, fine. I don't know, fun stuff. Next up, The Summer Hikaru Died, episode 1. So far, I think it was a very interesting first episode. It's slow, but I feel like it can be. For a couple of reasons. Part of that is the pacing feels like it's very slow country town kind of speed. And there's plenty that happens in the episode, but it does feel like it's like we're here for you to kind of absorb the vibes, so to speak. And combined with a lot of the interesting imagery, art that goes around it, I feel like it actually works pretty well. Especially since it's a horror and it does have things that make it feel very effectively creepy, and there's a chance this could actually be a horror anime, because horror anime tends to run into problems here and there, I would say, and that's a very abstract way to say it, but mostly it's like, to some degree, when the horror is animated, sometimes it doesn't always feel like you can get into it as horror, but so far there's just subtle things about what this episode has done that are just like, ooh, that's some nice creepy vibes. So, off to a good first episode. So we'll have to see how it goes from there. Ugly Mug, Epic Fighter, Episode 1. I guess we'll have to see. The main character's backstory is fine enough. The thing I don't know about it so far is it sets up where he finds out, okay, I'm about to be isekai, but if I do all these things, then I get points. So if I just keep doing negative things to myself, I'll just keep typing stuff in here, I'll just get myself so many bonus points that I'm, for all intents and purposes, a god. Oh, but for some reason I had a time limit. I got sent there with base stats. It's like, okay, well, that makes it not exciting. But then he levels up once, and he gets to put those bonus points and everything. It's like, so I guess I don't have a good feeling for why they did that. The closest I could think is if they wanted to make it seem like he was weak to the other characters, but I'm not sure if it's done that. Especially since, there are things that were followed up from there where it's just like, does he still come off as weak to them? Maybe somebody to appreciate and take care of, I think. Which is nice, considering he doesn't look that great, and the other people probably deliberately chose to look good. Maybe even they put points up in that or something like that. But I digress. Anyways, the point is, we've got all that, and it's really hard to tell what to feel about it. It seems okay enough. Definitely worth giving another episode a shot just to kind of see what it's planning to do with it. Maybe it's more endearing than it looked at first glance, but I don't know. We'll have to see. Next up is Night of the Living Cat. And I would say it's actually a surprisingly mediocre first episode. I'm not entirely surprised because it's a funny premise. But the question is, what do you do with the premise? And so far, episode 1's answer is maybe have a couple zombie apocalypse situations happen, but cats instead of zombies. But I don't know. It might lean into that it may not be leaning into that enough, because the main characters do seem to be like, oh no, how am I going to deal with this cat apocalypse? They're too cute. I'm just going to have to give myself to them. It's like, amusing, but I think the problem is that the first episode comes off as very one-trick pony, if even that. And I say it comes off as. I'm not sure it necessarily is, but I think when you look at its score and you say, oh, that isn't as great as I was hoping it was going to be, my guess is it's because of that. Because the first episode doesn't sell the feeling that subsequent episodes are going to be fun. It's like, are the next episode, are we going to get a Don't Dead Open Inside reference or something like that? Well, maybe we will, but if we do, will that be the only amusing thing about it? And the rest of the episode is just an excuse to draw a lot of cute cats, which looks neat, but it's kind of hard to watch that for 20 minutes for a dozen episodes for 4 months or something like that. I guess Yeah. So it's off to a strange start. We'll just have to see how the rest of it goes. But, you know, I'll give it more shots just to kind of see what it does with it. Even though the first episode did not grab me as much as... surprisingly, I think of all the stuff I've watched... Well, other than Kaiju number 8 EEX, it was maybe one of the few things that didn't catch me. Oh well. Apocalypse Bringer... Fuck, how do you pronounce it? World Conquest starts with the Civilization of Ruin, Episode 1. It's a long title. Longer than any of the other titles on this list. Maybe because some of the other ones are short. I don't know. And I thought it was a pretty fun first episode. What can I say about it? Okay, for starters, I don't think the main character and his girl minion are necessarily the selling point. But I think they work out. They're kind of refreshing and new. So it looks like, you know, oh, now he's in a world and there's somebody that's been an NPC with him as he's played through a game multiple times. It's like, is this an overworld scenario? And it immediately reassures you that it is not, which is actually kind of refreshing because it means that she understands his situation completely in a way that the NPCs in Overlord just do not. In other words, in Overlord, they don't understand, oh, they were in a video game, etc. She seems to understand she was in a video game and that she's played multiple times. And even though he's been a specific character named after a specific thing in all those playthroughs, she knows that it's really him, the player name. She knows him by name. That was it. And she's always wanted to meet the player behind the thing, which also kind of gives Monica vibes, if you know what I mean. I probably shouldn't go any further than that in case I just accidentally said something. But the point is, it's kind of adorable. And I think what works out about it is they're synced up really well on stuff. So it's just a matter of, okay, now they're kind of going to expand from there, from the show. That's the premise they give, and I believe the first episode supports that idea. But the thing I think that sells it, the thing that interests me is other characters that have seen our main protagonist can't fathom him. And it reminds me a lot of Level 99 Villainous, the way that the light novel protagonist girl could not properly perceive our main character because even though to everybody else she just looked like a girl who was, okay, now we know she's level 99, light protagonist could only see a monster, which, you know, presumably a lot of animals also only saw. And that seems to be the case here, but that combined with his maybe a slight awkwardness, his lackadaisical nature, does make him come off as amusingly detached, and not in a way where it's like, well, shouldn't they be perceiving that? They can't. He's imperceivable to them. And it's really neat, and it's setting itself up to be maybe something more like a village building sort of show. And that's the thing I really want to see. I want to see not, oh, he's OP and so... I want to see a village start building up. Whether that's the way he expected to or not. You know, as they go and explore the world, I'm not sure how much they need to explore the world at this point. Like, that could be something that happens at the very end of this episode, and what they've set up so far would actually make for decent starting material for a village building thing. I'd want to see what happens. It's very similar to Outcast's restaurant in terms of there's an element of it which is the MC bringing something unique about them to a situation that just brings happiness to people around them. And I kind of want to see that with Apocalypse Bringer as well. Whereas it's not his inherent power, but him knowing how to use his minions' power and what they're doing, etc. Yeah, I just want to see how that expands. So, you know, again, I liked a lot of the first episodes that I've seen so far. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything this season is better than like previous seasons. It could just mean that, you know, the things that caught my interest in my genres of interest happen to be good this time. Whereas last season, maybe it's like, yeah, Giga, you fucking idiot. You should have watched X, Y, and Z. because those had really good seasons, first episodes. I don't know. But last but not least on the list is Gachia Kuta, episode 1. And so far, again, off to a good start, I would say. With my only complaint being I really want episode 2 and see where it's going from there. Because as far as setting up, okay, the main character, yeah, I kind of want to see him get revenge on people. I really want to see him get revenge on people. And I want to see it from episode 2 if that's what they plan to do, or if they plan to kind of meander in a stuck place. Because they've set interesting things up with him. You know, they've established in the first episode that he's really good at fixing and repairing things. So it's like, I want to see what he's going to do in this situation. And I want to see that come into play and build up into some good form of revenge. That said, the problem is by the time it gets to a potential revenge moment, I'm not sure if the show will be there, because there's this subtle implication that maybe the politics or the nature of the world or something like that could be something that's shaped by what he does. And by the end of it, instead of getting revenge, it's just like, I don't know. But, you know, call me a little bloodthirsty, but I want to see some fucking heads roll. But that's just my opinion. There's plenty of other interesting things that have started. I think there's one, I should have had it on the TV over there, because I can't remember the name, about an alien who comes to Earth to try to make things happy. That one's rated really highly, and I'm quite curious about it. It's just, you know, outside of my normal medieval fantasy isekai schlock. So it takes extra for me to consider doing that, but I still have that tab open up because I'm curious. Lord of Mystery, I still have it open up. I'm a little curious, but probably I won't watch it unless it starts becoming dubbed, maybe. So I might not watch it because when it starts getting dubbed, if it starts getting dubbed, it might be too late. We've got more stuff coming up. Oh, yes, I haven't watched Call of the Night Season 2 because I still haven't watched Season 1. Nine Rulers Crown was intriguing looking, but I don't think that's streaming on any of the normal streaming sources, so didn't start that. My Dress Up Darling Season 2, technically I think I've got like one episode left of Season 1. I have to figure that out all over again. But if there's anything holding me back from that, it's that I guess the relationship stuff on its own isn't driving me. Like, it's interesting, if the stuff I have right now, would I call anything really relationship-y? And I sort of feel like the summer Hikaru died kind of is. I think there's a kind of implied homosexual attraction between the main character and his friend who died, which is very interesting because I think that it works really well with the dynamics because I don't know, it sets up why it never took off before, why he's desperate now, etc., etc. And yeah, very intriguing because it also feels like it could actually enhance the horror elements to a degree. And I'm not sure how much I want to talk about the why that is, but you know, interesting stuff. I know the Earthbound Mole, I think that aired a day earlier, and I get the impression that that one has a weird rating because maybe the way it's telling its jokes is a little not connecting with the people watching it. Maybe it feels like maybe it's conceptually fine, but there's just weird disconnects like that. And I'm not sure. It's just like this list was already so long of stuff that I watched. There was also that one about the RPG about Cthulhu sort of stuff, and that one was rated through the floor, I think, assuming I understand correctly, because the subtitling was done with AI, and while it's like, okay, well, if the AI did a good job, why would you care? But that's the point. It didn't do a good job. And none of the quality control at either the company that brought it to Crunchyroll, nor the people at Crunchyroll really stopped it and said, this isn't really watchable. There's just things that it gets wrong about the subtitles in the way that the worst fan subbers would, whereas there's a big problem here where they have the transcripts to the episode, so they should be able to be giving the AI better ability to translate. But it really, that just means that it's a bad subtitle job done by the original company. And it sounds like it's not even quite funny, as in like, oh, well, what was that for the Sega Genesis? Zeroing, was it? How are you, gentlemen? All your base are belong to us. You are on the way to destruction. So that one, I'm not sure if the game itself is necessarily legendary on its own, but because they did their translation internally and they did a bad job of it, it's kind of fun. And I get the impression that this one maybe wasn't fun that some way. It's always possible that people are just hating on AI because they hate on AI, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the case, just my understanding of stuff. But yeah, we also got the next season of sort of the Demon Hunter that will start. Come on, mouse. Where did the mouse go? There it is. But let's see. We got the next season of Rising of the Shield Hero. Oh, Bird Bitch again. Well, we might not see her. But Rising of the Shield Hero, at least season 3, wasn't as mediocre feeling as season 2, but season 3 was still kind of thematically feeling all over the place. So I guess we'll just have to see what season 4 feels like when that airs later this week. Reincarnated as the Seventh Prince, season 2. Looking forward to that, because hopefully he's just as unhinged in the second season as he was in the first one. It was great. With Vengeance, Sincerely Your Broken Saintess is on my notes, on my radar. New Panting and Stocking with Garter Belt. We'll have to see on that one. Dr. Stone, Science Future, Core 2. Yeah, sure. Togen Anki is on my notes. I'm not sure what to make of that. Yeah, and of course Kaiju number 8, Season 2, when it starts for real. According to my notes, Saturday, July 19th. So, I guess I remembered that correctly. At least as far as my notes go. So, a couple more things. But so far, this season is off to an entertaining start. Really quite sad that, I had a 4-day weekend for the 4th of July. I didn't do any particularly special celebrating. I did go up to see my parents and hang out with them and eat some stuff and chips. But I also had my freezer accidentally freeze over and food in it start de-thawing and stuff. It just meant that I lost ice cream. That's all y'all have to worry about, which is sad because there was saffron ice cream in there. But it pretty much meant that just hang out with some family, eat some food, head back home, play Terraria. Over the weekend, I did stream on Twitch me playing through Terraria on Legendary difficulty. Now, if you're familiar with it, you may say, but doesn't it only go up to Master? If you're saying that, it means you're not familiar with the special seeds. There's two special seeds that bump your difficulty up one more level. But I had another reason for targeting that level, because you don't get anything new item-wise for doing it. It's the same as what you would get from Master, just more difficult. And because this was the Get Fixed Boy world, it also meant it was a very difficult build, and yes, it was really hard. I did accidentally fly off the top of the screen once. I just lost track of how the top of the screen I was. Oh yeah, because probably that. Anyways, but my goal was actually to fight a unique boss that only shows up in that mode, and I guess that's one and only one unique item that shows up in that difficulty, and it's an item this boss drops. And yeah, cool. Did that all good, and then I went on and beat the Moon Lord. It's not necessarily a fun Twitch stream. I also wasn't engaging with chat, so I'm just not meant to be a Twitch streamer. No, not with my setup. I really need something that allows me to have the text right here, especially since when I play a game, especially for Twitch, I'm being really focused on it, so I don't notice the chat very well when it's all the way over there, all the way over here on the laptop here, or something like that. It really needs to be in front of me where the action is, but I am a one-screen gamer, so yeah, I gotta figure something out there. Anyways, I see my battery's getting low on the camera. I've been chatting for a long time. Hopefully y'all are having fun with this new season. If you have episodes or anime you started, and you're like, Giga, consider this, feel free to give it. I do read all the comments, even if I don't reply to even direct questions asked at me. I get emails for all of them, and I at least look through the emails. But, feel free to say something. Otherwise, I guess I'll wrap things up there. Y'all, have a nice week.